Why do I keep buying signature guitars of artists I don't even listen to? Is it just to hurt myself? Or could there be a reason the industry doesn't want you to find out about? Hi there, I'm Chris, and I'm going to try to put the guitar back in real time without breaking anything. Yeah, I did it, thank you. Okay, so I'm sitting here with most of my guitars. Some of them are, pretty standard, but many of them are actually signature guitars, and they are the ones I end up playing the most. But it's weird, because most of the time I don't even listen to the artists. So, for example, this is an FRM-100, that's a Paul Gilbert signature. Now, for transparency, I love Paul Gilbert, and I've been inspired by him in, the early days watching his instructional videos, but I've never learned a Paul Gilbert solo, only like a few licks from that RH album. I don't listen to Mr. Big or Racer X or anything like that. Same thing with this guitar, which is an EVH Wolfgang standard. I love Eddie Van Halen. Anything I hear from him is awesome. And most of the stuff I've heard comes probably from those Michael Jackson tunes. But I never listened to Van Halen. I never learned a solo of his. I never even, I don't know if he has any instructional videos, but I never learned from that. And finally, I guess this would be, in my eyes, this is the Alan Holdsworth signature. Although that's not really official, I think many would agree with me that that's almost like his signature because it's so, associated with his most productive decades, I would say. So, but Alan Holdsworth, I do listen to him, I should say, but I've never learned anything from him. Never a solo, never a song, never even a chord progression. So why is that so? I mean, you'd think that if you go buy a signature guitar, you're really into the artists. And for me, that's not the case. So let's have a look a little bit at these guitars and the specs and why I think they're interesting. First of all, if you're just out looking for a guitar and you don't have anything super specific in mind, you're most likely going to land in one of the common brands or models. We have the Strat model, the Les Paul, the typical pointy guitar, or like the Telecaster, and then a few variations. But those are kind of the big categories out there. There's obviously a million different brands and models, but if we look at the biggest ones, the biggest categories, that's what we have, right? Guitars are a bit conservative, I would say. There's a lot of fresh stuff going on, but the mainstream is still the same old, same old. And, I have two Strats, actually. I have two Les Paul styles. You see the red one there and the other one here. So I'm not really interested in more variations. I want something totally new. And once you start investigating that market, it can quickly get pretty expensive. If you want something that's not your average Strat with like a different pickup or something, if you want something that's radically different, you can always look at custom-built guitars, but that's gonna land you in a very, very expensive place. But when you think about it, a signature guitar, that's basically a guitar which certain guitarists has, it's a product of years of experimenting. And finally, they've decided on their dream guitar, and they've decided to start mass producing it. At least that's the case for the guitars I have. I don't have any super expensive signature guitars. So those guitars are, they carry a lot of value, at least for the artist, and usually for all the fans of that artist. So if you're interested in that artist, that signature guitar becomes super interesting, right? But could it be interesting even if you're not into the artist? I mean, let's look at the specs. What's this? So this is, it looks like a Strat configuration, but two of these pickups are actually, I think they're called injectors, DiMarzio, and they're stacked single coils. And this is, I think, Area 51 or something. Yeah, this is a vintage style single coil, or decent, which you can then combine with your 5-way switch to get both high gain tones and bluesier tones, switch. Pretty cool. So, and the specs are pretty different. I mean, it has a scale length of a Gibson, like 24 or something, and it has a set neck. So it's pretty much Gibson, but it has that single coil configuration. But the body is very different, right? It's like the what's it called, the Iceman, but it's upside down. And personally, I absolutely love it. Just the way it can have it against your body here. It's just I have an issue with my right ear. I can't really hear well. But when I put my chin here, it's awesome because I get back my stereo hearing. It's just awesome. But I didn't buy it for that. Actually, I had an accident with the ear after I bought this guitar. But this guitar is very different, but it's very cool. Now, if I wanted to build myself such a guitar, if we can just pretend that this guitar didn't exist, that route would be almost impossible for me to go, at least without totally breaking the bank. And chances are, since I don't have any experience in building or ordering custom guitars, I would fail miserably at many attempts before getting something even remotely close to this guitar. But hold it, Chris. How would you know that this is even a guitar that fits you? How do you know that this guitar works for you? So here's the deal. I didn't know that this guitar would work for me. I don't think that it's a very wise move for guitarists to choose their guitars. I actually think that for 90% of all guitarists out there, it's better if the guitars choose their guitarists. What? I'm going to another video now. So what do I mean by this? Well, for example, if you read online, you're gonna hear or see lots of opinions, right? Oh, I hate Telecasters, I love our Ibanez RGs, whatever. But the thing is, we all know that Telecasters are useful, right? They are good guitars. They're awesome. They must be because so many guitarists have used them. All the way from vintage rock to high gain. Telecasters are cool. So instead of just, pretending like it shouldn't be a thing and we hate Telecasters, wouldn't it make sense to try a Telecaster? Okay, so most people who hate Telecasters have tried a Telecaster. But trying a guitar in the guitar store for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour, does that mean you're gonna appreciate the guitar for what it can do? No way! I mean, it took me like several months before I could start appreciating my Telecaster. But I still bought it knowing that sooner or later I would find out what's so unique about a Telecaster. And these days I can really appreciate having a clean tone and just twanging away on that low E string. Maybe bending the third or the third fret and getting super twangy tones in a way that I couldn't get with any other guitar. But again, that took me months to discover. I would never have found out about that in the guitar store. So what this leads me to think is that we as guitarists, we're making really quick decisions when deciding about what guitars we like and don't like. Now, most people don't have the luxury of owning many guitars, or actually, probably you guys do. Some people watching this probably do. I have to say that I don't have any super expensive guitars. The most expensive guitar I have is probably maybe that Japanese RG, the green one there, or maybe like a Parker Nightfly. But most of the guitars I've bought either used or cheap. And I've spent a little bit of money upgrading them or tweaking them by myself. So I don't think having many expensive guitars, I mean, sure, I wouldn't mind, but it's not a game changer in any way. I think the real game changer lies in having several different guitars with very different specs. And this is where the artist guitars come in, or signature guitars, because they are radically different from your standard Gibsons and Fenders. And I find that extremely cool because it teaches me things, new things that I wouldn't have discovered with other guitars. In fact, if I grab this LTD guitar, I can shred away. But if I grab some other guitar, actually this guitar is not your average shred guitar. It's like a mix between your blues and hard rock guitar. And I love that. It's not my choice when I want to shred, even though I know Paul Gilbert does a good job shredding on this guitar. But it's just awesome for blues, rock, hard rock, and I should say it's remarkably comfortable given how chunky the neck is. So it's, I mean, I can certainly understand why Paul Gilbert shreds away on it. For me, it's not really what I do, and it's not really related to the neck. I would say it's more of a pickup thing for me. In fact, I even installed like a push-pull thing here to see if that would help me get a more of a humbucker sound, to get a bit more juice out of it for shredding. But I don't think it worked that well, since this is essentially already a humbucker. It's a stacked single coil, and I don't know, it doesn't really change much. On some of my guitars, running 2 pickups in, I think it's series, it does give you a humbucker feel, but it doesn't seem to do that, since this is essentially already a humbucker. Anyway, so this guitar, to me, brings out the heavy rock side, or not the heavy rock, like the hard rock, like the heavy blues side of me. It's awesome. But again, it took me like 6 months or even a year to find that. In the beginning, I was like, what am I going to do with this guitar? I can't shred with it. It feels awesome. It's different, but I don't know what to do with it. But gradually, I learned to appreciate the characteristics that were so different from all my other guitars. Again, I couldn't have gotten that by trying to build or order such a guitar. No way. And that would have been insanely expensive either way. So this is a Chinese guitar, and I actually got it new, fairly cheap. I think it was like probably around 600 euros, the equivalent. I bought it here in Sweden, and I spoke with the Swedish, I think it was the import something guy, and he said that, well, I don't think the Swedish audience was quite ready for this guitar yet. I think that says it well. It's very different, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that if you find it cheap and different, or relatively cheap, I mean, this is a really quality build. I didn't know what to expect from a Chinese guitar, but everything is awesome on this guitar, as far as I'm concerned. It hasn't moved anything. I've had it for several years. It has a really nice setup, just really good. So my hope that all Chinese guitars are like this. I think maybe that's not the case, but let's have a look at this guitar instead. Well, I didn't break anything. Awesome. So this might be the guitar I play the most these days. It's just very cool guitar. Now, as I said, never listened to Van Halen, never learned anything from Van Halen. When I hear his stuff, it's awesome, but I kind of listen to the next generation. So Nuno Bettencourt, Vito Bratta, like Blue Saracen, one of my favorite. I don't know if he's that much into Van Halen, but to me they share some similarities. So those are the guys I learned more from, but I never learned anything from Van Halen. Still, this guitar, I couldn't resist it. Again, radically different from your average Strat and Gibson thing, because it has this bolt-on neck, but it doesn't really have the typical bolt-on, 3 single coil configuration. The neck is just so good. It's a bit more narrow down here. I think your average Strat is like 4.2 centimeters, and this is a bit narrower. And you can really feel it, because you can really get around it easily. And in fact, this neck has made me want to get a guitar with even narrower neck, because it changes the way I play if I can totally have my grip like this. If you picture yourself like a 4-string Fender jazz bass, that's the kind of feeling, you know, where you just can grab around it like that. It's just awesome. And it makes you do different. I don't do that with like the Paul Gilbert style guitar, you know, in that way. It's it just lends itself for different kind of playing. And it just goes to prove my point again. You get a radically different guitar, you have no choice but to play radically different. And to me, that's worth a lot. I mean, all the time and money I've invested in different instructional material, but having a different guitar, it's like having it's a bit like having a guitar teacher, because the guitar tells you, no, you can't do your normal stuff. You have to do something new. That's what a guitar teacher, that's what I would tell my students, you know. Don't play your average thing if you want to progress. Play something new, play something different. And these guitars, they force me to do that. Not only do they do that, but once I've started to play something different, then I start to appreciate it more, and I start to understand that, well, now I can't live without this functionality. I can't live without this style of guitar that I totally didn't know what it was, or which I didn't know what it was just 6 months back. So it just goes to show you, don't be afraid of experimenting with guitars, especially if you can find a guitar with radically different specifications. Then that can open up doors. Again, I don't think guitarists should choose the guitar. I think guitarists should choose the guitarist. I think that makes sense to me, because I'm not interested. I know some people, you know, they love Yngwie or SRV and they want 10,000 strats. I like Yngwie and SRV as well, but 2 strats is more than enough, at least right now for me. So I really appreciate having the choice, and I would argue that for a good 90-95% of all people, even thinking about a custom guitar makes 0 sense. Why? Because you haven't tried enough options yet. Just because you've had 3 strats doesn't mean that the 4th one should be a custom strat. I mean, it could be, it doesn't hurt, you know, it's all good stuff, and if you can afford it, that's fine. But I don't think that's gonna give you the maximum amount of value for your bucks, basically. I think it makes much more sense to get many different guitars before you even consider like building a guitar on your own or ordering a custom-made guitar, because you simply don't know what options there are, and you can't really appreciate the different options by trying guitars in the guitar store, because it takes time for your body, your mind, to adapt to a new instrument with new options. So I think the conclusion I'm trying to reach here is that a custom-built guitar is not really relevant for most people out there. What is relevant is getting a cheaper but very different guitar, so you can start navigating between options, and you can spend some time with the options to start appreciate them. And in the process, you're going to find that your world and horizons grow. You're going to find that you actually learn from playing a radically different instrument. Not only do you learn what you appreciate in this radically different instrument, but you also learn to play differently and therefore better, you know, as your kind of arsenal of chops and tricks grows. So, signature guitars by artists you don't even know or listen to can be awesome. If you like how the guitar looks and you know that there's some famous dude out there who really likes this guitar, and if the guitar has a decent price, why not? Go for it. I would suggest you at least buy a whole bunch of like mid-range signature guitars before you even consider custom build. I think that could be good for you. Okay, so I hope you appreciated this video. I usually don't do these gear videos, but I do spend a lot of time thinking and doing stuff with gear, so I figured I could try and see what you guys think. If you appreciate it, let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for sticking around. See ya. Cheers.